Assalamu alaikum everyone, and this is Arslan Siddiqui from your subject, classical drama till Renaissance, and this is the online lecture of the series from the early four lectures or early four sessions. This is our sequence of the fifth lecture, and in which we are going to explain that how English theater, because we have already explained, we already talked about how Greek theater and Roman theater has continued, and then we also looked into that how the Bible and Christianity has in has an impact on our place. So we can also understand that uh, the theater has a long history from the era of Greek and then from the era of uh, Romans. And then we can also see that the Western drama and Western theater is highly influenced by these Greek theater and Roman theater. Now, what do we have to do? English theater. English theater has a history with the English language, and that how the language got developed and how Europe was seen to be working on this. Then we are going to explore that what is the history and how the figures are. So I will actually talk about first the historical expression. So in an introduction, literature like an art and general expression of aesthetic effect, vision, experience, attitude, and beliefs. It is the way for helping in identity or the human being and double awareness. Literature is an expression and an intensification of the sense of goodness, truth, love, and beauty. Actively literature activity closely related to the life and civilization, and there is no civilization without ethics and art. In spite of the delay literary renaissance in England and then in the Europe other countries, but it is full of masterpieces. So you can see the Renaissance is being discussed here. I will define the term English literature, and it is the oldest Western literature and rich literature in various genres. Shakespeare is one of the most important British writers, playwrights, poet who contributed to feeding the world of literature. He's one of the first to apply classical rules authoring drama, and the theater genre expresses the reality of the society through the ages. The theater genre expresses the reality of society through the ages. Theater is the father's art. It is the instinctive type of literature that reflects culture of the community and it limits of knowledge. Perhaps the continuation of both this art and its development demonstrate the depth of the English culture. In this paper, through this paper, I would like to explain that I identify the English theater and the stages of its evolution through the simplified presentation and the history of fields and figures. First of all, if we interwoven or if we interconnect with the previous lectures, we can find out that the early drama, particularly the moral play and mystery plays, have affected the way the theater has driven, and it is kind of the parallel form of two kinds of literature can be seen through this. Uh, Number one, yeah, you can see that. Yeah, you can read the whatever we have discussed. That's a summarized here theater. We receive a prolific theatre Greek and Greek eras. It is believed to be due to the ancient Egyptians era. The ancient Egyptians, the most important plays representative of the new creation is pharaohs, and the pharaohs are son of God. The play is a certain genre, tells the story through the play representative, the people representative, and they represent the action. एलिमेंट्स ऑफ द प्ले पे हमारी काफ़ी डिस्कशन हो चुकी है पहले ही, और हम डिस्कस किया था, लेकिन अर्लियर अगर एंशियंट टाइम में आप देखें तो वही है, प्लॉट नोट करेक्टर डायलॉग्स थिएटर एंड द सेटिंग्स एंड एवरीथिंग. थिएटिकल टाइप्स, थिएटर की जो अर्ली टाइप्स हैं अगर आप नोटिस करें तो पहले सबसे पहले हमने बताया था कि देवर मेजर टू टाइप्स, सटायर एंड ट्रेजेडी. फिर सटायर को मेनिंदर जो कि ग्रीक ड्रामेटिस्ट था, उसने इसको स्प्लिट किया था कि देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन कॉमेडी एंड सटायर. कॉमेडी बिलोंग्स टू मोर कॉमन पीपल, ऑन द अदर हैंड सटायर इज फॉर मोर एजुकेटेड masses and targeting the high value, it means the high value node uh, meanings, and it's for only elite people, and usually it is understood by the people who are from educated classes. However, you can see that the tragedy, the Avenue Theatre, the similar to the former kinds of said, but happy ending for all. Melodrama representing person with the bad, harming some of the poor and vulnerable people, sympathizes with them. The public hates the well category. It is characterized by the violence, exaggeration in her scenes, focusing on the conflict between good and evil. It has happy ending where good triumphs over evil and comedy. One of the most popular types that characterized amusing and funny positions, which aims to delight the public entertainment, but in design designed to deliver a certain idea through comedy. The history of the theater. Acha ji, and then comes the comedy, melodrama. You know the melodrama, then the comedy. Comedy remained the most popular after tragedy in both Greek and all. Okay. The history of the English theatre, the first appearance of the ethical plays in England was during the 15th century. These plays were photographed personalities represented abstract properties such as good and evil. However, these plays were not less realistic than the previous plays. It was aimed to teach moral and viewers lesson. Morality plays, mystery plays, and miracle plays. However, in that time there was a secular sort of plays in which the peasants were performing in the plays, but they were not actually government or the king supported plays. In old English literature, before after or Anno Domini 500 and 1100, for the first 600 years, where he scored antique English literature and Anglo-Saxon epic poem Beowulf and first major works in English literature. So you can see that there is no sign of a literature theater, but there are epics. So but people believe that these epics have already been performed. They have been performed by many by people. Okay. And then we have the intermediate or the middle English, which is called the Chaucers, and the classical age as well. Geoffrey Chaucer is considered to be the greatest writer in the English intermediate through writing short stories called Canterbury and a group of comic stories in a poetic form. Travelers tell the stories in the past, and these stories were also presented on the theater, so they can be seen as that this is kind of a form of literature which is presented on theater as well. Now, let's have a look at this third one. The beginning of the modern English, 1603, James Burbage, the first established a theatre. So, the first theatre was established in the 17th century, and 16 in the 17th century formally, but actually, because the Renaissance had already started in 16th century, so we can see that the plays were being written and they were being performed. So first established theater in 1603, and then the first but earlier those theaters were in England. They had been performed, and they were serving the court courtier writers. It called English Renaissance Theatre. The plays before represent on the street houses and palaces and the universities in England. The theatre had been built by Burbage. Incentive to the build. Actually, there are two reasons. Number one is aesthetic, the artistic reason, and then people found out that it's a good business. Building theater, investing in artists, hiring writers, hiring director. People were paying to watch, and even sometimes the government used to gift and fund them. So it was kind of a business as well for many companies, and even the companies invested in theaters in England, because England has become the center of visitors, migrants across the Europe, and they wanted sorts of sources of entertainment. And at that time, since England was turning into a urban jungle, so the sources of entertainment were fewer. Most of the thing is, according to the Oxford Handbook, it was also believed that many theater got popular because the elite or the people in, uh, you can say, the people of England, particularly, the people who are rich, educated, they wanted themselves to be away from the other classes or the labor classes. So even the entertainment got divided into class system. So they wanted some, royal, some sophisticated sources of entertainment, and theater was one of them. This helped to increase the spread of the play and Elizabethan theater, which was famous for vitality and focus on emotion. So Elizabethan, it means that the era was ruled by Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth. So you can read that. Okay, so we can see that the English theatre that helped increase the spread of the play. Elizabethan theatrical was famous for vitality and focus on emotions, and Thomas Kidd play was called the Spanish Tragedy, 1580. One of the oldest Elizabethan play, it is filled with scenes of violence and madness, has developed a model for topics assassination and revenge in the subsequent play. So you can see that Elizabethan play usually reflected few certain themes. One of the most common themes was romance, the love and the emotions, and then the second most common thing was reflection of the history, particularly historical event that changed the political and geographical as well as the social demograph of West. So you will find them. You can see that these kinds of things have happened. Particularly, there was another thing that I would like to mention here, that Elizabethan plays were highly inspired by Shakespeare, Marlowe, and Thomas Kidd and Ben Jonson. And these writers were very creative, and they were not relying heavily on the ancient themes. So they wrote out of the box and outside the box. So that, therefore, you can find all the mixture of supernatural element, the element that is used for creating Gothic touch, or however, the Gothic was not considered as a genre at that time. That was called the Spanish Tragedy, and one of the oldest Elizabethan plays. It is filled with the scenes of violence and madness, has developed a model for topics assassin and revenge in the subsequent plays. There was a group of Elizabethan theatre called University Talented or University Wit. They were, in which University Wit, Robert Greene, Christopher Marlowe, okay, George Bell, uh, Thomas Gray, White. These were the people who were known as University Wit because they were the Cambridge University graduates, and they were writing for the Elizabethan theatre. Among them, Robert Greene, Christopher Marlowe, and George Bell. Cambridge Christopher Marlowe was the most important playwright of this time. He's considered to be even the more talented than Shakespeare. However, he did not live long, and he got killed and assassinated at the age of 31. He was. It is also believed that he was a spy, but he did his few writings, and these writings remain one of the best writings in English literatures. One of his plays is still taught in the world and considered as, after Shakespearean tragedy, tragedies, four tragedies, as the fifth best tragedy. That's known as Tragedy of Dr. Faustus. Another play, Tamburlaine, then another play, The Jew of Malta. So they became the most popular at that time. You can see here Tamburlaine is discussed 1587 and then 1588. After because Dr. Faustus became most popular one, and it earned a great fame to Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe basically was a contemporary to William Shakespeare. However, his work got shadowed by Shakespeare. So, if two greats live together in one era, it is very difficult for one to survive because किसी न किसी एक का इन्फ्लुएंस ज़रूर आगे आ जाता है और वो उसको वहाँ पर जो है ओवर शेडो कर जाता है. अच्छा जी, अब आ जाते हैं हम एलिज़ाबेथियन थिएटर की तरफ, जो एक्चुअल एलिज़ाबेथियन थिएटर है. एलिज़ाबेथ क्वीन एलिज़ाबेथ हैड अ पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट इन थिएटर. शेक्सपियर वाज अच्छा, अब यहाँ पे आ जाता है कि शेक्सपियर, विलियम शेक्सपियर इज द ग्रेटेस्ट प्ले राइट. जी बिल्कुल, शी इज द ग्रेटेस्ट प्ले राइट. who could not any English writer. The the fame he earned, his simulation, wonderful poetry, or his superior ability on the character analysis. Shakespeare's characters were more popular and they were more common. They were close to the real life examples, and the emotion the he presented, the hate, the love, the revenge, the frustration that he showed in his character was quite realistic and praised by admired by the audience. His superior ability on the character analysis, Shakespeare was adopted in the construction of his plays on improvisational comedy, blending between tragedy and comedy, as mixing between the scene, the dancing, and singing. It was held in an extended dramatic between palace, place, and space. Shakespeare inducted histories rather than superstition. The English comedy used magic and non-mental elements. ओके, तो अगर आप देखें तो शेक्सपियरियन प्लेज बिकेम पॉपुलर। उसके बाद आता है स्टूअर्ट फैमिली एंड द पार्लियामेंटेरियंस। 1603 में जेम्स जो है वो अस्यूम करता है पावर, और ये एक एरा कहलाता है जैकोबियन एरा, जो कि तकरीबन 16 साल तक रहता है जैकोबियन एरा। उसके बाद फिर चार्ल्स आ जाएगा, उसके बाद फिर इंटरम जो है कॉमनवेल्थ इंटरम आ जाएगा। तो 3 दौर अदवार गुजरेंगे 1660 तक, और ये बड़े अहम, these are the most important eras that shaped England religious and secular states. Appeared so-called play Jacob's play as it is written the reign of the James First. Jacob's plays reflected Elizabethan theatre, especially with respect to the violence spectator, and the revenge was reversed. Webster's, इसमें जो मेजर प्ले राइटर्स थे उसमें एक वेबस्टर्स था, उसका डचेस माल्फी एंड कंसीडर द मास्टरपीस ऑफ द ड्रामा रिवेंज। The period is also known as satirical comedies dealing with exchange of the variety of topics. यहाँ पर यहाँ पर जो थिएटर है वो दम तोड़ रहा है आहिस्ता आहिस्ता। अगर आप देखें, फॉर एग्जाम्पल फ्रांसिस बर्माउंट in his play The Night of the Burning Pestle harnesses old romances and heroes. The play also attacked the merchant class newborn. Ben Jonson का एक प्ले आता है इसमें दौर के अंदर जो कि सबसे अहम प्ले है। There were two plays that Ben Jonson created. One is The Alchemist, which is basically a tragedy and the human philosophy, and the second is Volpone. Volpone was a mocking comedy which was highly hailed by people, common people, and particularly it was basically a mockery on the way people elected their leaders and their kings and how they followed their kings. अगर मैं इस पर्टिकुलर एरा की बात करूँ तो ये दिस एरा इज फुल ऑफ सिविल वॉर्स, confusion in the Europe, particularly in France and Germany. Civil wars were being fought. Amidst all these civil wars and chaos and confusion and literary confusion, प्रोज राइटिंग, जो आपकी प्रोज राइटिंग है उसको बड़ा प्रॉस्पेरिटी मिली, क्योंकि थिएटर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बंद होना शुरू हो गए थे। बिकॉज एट दैट टाइम द प्रिविलेंस ऑफ प्रोटेस्टेंट प्योरिटन्स यूरोप के अंदर हैवी हो गया था। कैथोलिक चर्चेस जो है वर बीइंग कन्वर्टेड इनटू प्योरिटन्स, एंड देयर वाज अ टेंशन बिटवीन दीज टू सेक्टेरियन एलिमेंट्स ऑफ यूरोप इन क्रिश्चियनिटी। मोर ओवर, जो सेकुलरिज्म और जो एनलाइटमेंट थी जो रिस्टोर की थी रेनेसां ने, वो यहाँ पे आके थोड़ी सी जो है वो प्रॉब्लम में आ गई थी। एनीवेज, अगर आप देखें तो यहाँ पे रोमानियन थिएटर का भी, बैन जॉनसन जो है एंशियंट रोमानियन थिएटर का यहाँ पे रेफरेंस आएगा, और आपको दोबारा ऐसा लगेगा जैसे ग्रीक element is being used in theatre. After the death of James, the quality of England theatre had deteriorated. ये सबसे ख़राब दौर है इंग्लैंड का, जिसका कहलाया जाता है चार्ल्स वन का दौर। चार्ल्स वन was not a very appropriate man or moral man, and he misused church and theatre both, and he got a lot of Puritans killed. और इंग्लैंड जैसे हम कहते हैं ना कि वल्गैरिटी, ऑब्ससिनिटी ज़्यादा आम हो गई थी। Parliamentarian closed theatres in 1642 and claimed that their theatre evil. The caution has been in effect for 8 years until the year 1660, और ये तकरीबन 18 ईयर्स तक और जो है ये रहा था। कॉमनवेल्थ वालों ने बंद कर दिया था। हालांकि ये भी सही नहीं था कि आप थिएटर को ब्लेम करते, आप कंटेंट को ब्लेम कर सकते थे, आप राइटर्स को ब्लेम करते या चार्ल्स को ब्लेम करते, लेकिन ये जो प्यूरिटन्स थे, they were too extremist, so they didn't want people to be enlightened and they wanted people to remain stick to religious values. उसके बाद आता है प्ले इन द एरा ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी रिटर्न। 1660 से 1770 तक ये कहलाता है चार्ल्स टू का रिस्टोरेशन पीरियड, इसको न्यो क्लासिसिज्म भी कहते हैं, और दिस एरा इज़ ऑल्सो नोन एज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंटरेस्टिंग एरास, क्योंकि अगेन वही इसमें बहुत बड़े बड़े फिलोसफर्स आए, हॉब्स, जॉन लॉक, मैकीवाइली, स्प्रिंस। ये सब बुक्स जो है इंग्लैंड में तो नहीं बल्कि इर्द गिर्द लिखी गई थी, गिथे का नावल लिखा गया था। तो ये इस सब एरा जो है ये रोमांटिसिज्म और इस तरफ लेके जाएगा, लेकिन यहाँ पे बेसिकली मोर इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट और बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स हुई थी। Dominated in two types according to the theater's period property return. Comedy moral, heroic plays. अब यहाँ पे मॉरल कॉमेडीज शुरू हुई थी और हीरोइक प्लेस का एक दौर शुरू हुआ था। मैंने आपको बताया ना ये न्यो क्लासिज्म है। न्यो क्लासिज्म हीरोइक प्ले कब होते थे? ग्रीक्स के ज़माने में, यूनानियों के ज़माने में। अब आप देखें दोबारा ये बन गए। Moral comedy, the theme of the comedy between smart, cynical, and pornography. So yeah, the plot dealt with love, romance in a way they tended to swab light laugh. और ये फर्स्ट टाइम था कि दिस इज सेकंड टाइम एक्चुअली, इससे पहले भी जो थिएटर थे दे वर यूज फॉर बेसर इमोशंस एंड ऑब्सिनिटी चार्ल्स के ज़माने में, लेकिन ये दोबारा जो है चार्ल्स टू के ज़माने में इस तरह यहाँ पे यूज़ हुआ। पहली दफ़ा बाकायदा pornography was recognized as one of the genre, but since there was a religious influence, it got banned. It was not hailed by or appreciated by people. Heroic tragedies were, on the other hand, they were hailed, and they were sort of planed by them. This play was characterized by a complex plot which dealt with contrast between love and honor. Most of the event took place in the distant land. It did not focus only on the few incidents but on the stage's characters' flowery epics, and shows elevation of the place. Flowery epic is a form of poetry. It's composed of two verses rhyme. अगर देखें तो two verses rhyme A B, जो iambic pentameter है। इस दौर के अंदर जो लिटरेरी फिगर्स आई उन्होंने ज़्यादातर क्रिटिसिज्म पे काम किया rather than promoting. uh, yeah, they rather promoted themselves as more sublime critical writers में। अच्छा, यही वो राइज ऑफ मिडिल क्लास वाला दौर है। यही दौर है जिसमें डिक्शनरी भी आगे सैमुअल जॉनसन आ जाएगा। ड्राइडन बिकेम द मोस्ट पावरफुल पर्सन आफ्टर मिल्टन। मिल्टन ने जो है शायरी लिखी थी और क्रिटिक लिखा था। ड्राइडन जो है उसने प्लेज भी लिखे और उसने क्रिटिसिज्म भी लिखा। द मोस्ट फेमस लिटरेरी फिगर्स इन द एरा, लॉन्जाइनस भी था इस दौर में, रॉयलिज्म, एंड आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ मिल्टन in 1674 he wrote poetry, literary criticism, and popular plays. The best plays Dryden comedy is Mary and the Modern Ways, It All for Love. ये सारे satirical plays हैं, satire लिखा गया है। So Dryden was one of the greatest satirists England has ever produced. So in addition, Dryden wrote some of the most beautiful literary criticism in English, and his article about the theoretical poetry, which contains the super analysis of Shakespeare's works. According to Dryden, Shakespeare remained the greatest of time. Theoretical poetry, which contains the super analysis of Shakespeare's work. Dryden has written a number of heroic tragedies, such as Opening of Granada, the Orange Zippy. अब देखें आपके there are at that time in Muslim countries they were ruled by Ottoman Empire. Ottomans were very much fond of artistic things, and they were more liberal, but they were somehow Islamic, so they stick to their rule. 1700 तक जो है रिफॉर्मेशन और न्यू क्लासिज्म चलती है, और 1700 के बाद ऑगस्टन एज शुरू हो जाती है। ऑगस्टन एज इज़ द एज ऑफ प्रॉज क्रिटिसिज्म, नॉट द एज ऑफ थिएटर। इसमें कोई थिएटर को, पोइट्री को भी इतनी अप्रिसिएशन हासिल नहीं थी, और ये तकरीबन 50 साल तक आप देखें तो फर्स्ट टाइम 18 सेंचुरी के अंदर राइज ऑफ नॉवल शुरू होता है, क्योंकि लोगों के पास टाइम था, लोग नॉवल पढ़ना चाहते थे, और नॉवल जो थे दे वर रिटन फॉर मासेस एज वेल। उसके बाद ऑगस्टन एज के बाद जॉनसन का एरा शुरू होता है, जो कि एक्चुअल एरा ऑफ राइज ऑफ मिडिल क्लास है, ड्यू टू इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, ड्यू टू एक्सपेंशन ऑफ एम्पायर इन यूके। यूके गॉट पावर, और इसमें बड़े बड़े नाम आएंगे आपको। इसमें जॉनसन, सैमुअल जॉनसन, गोल्ड स्मिथ, ओलिवर गोल्ड स्मिथ, ये फेमस राइटर्स आएंगे आपको, ये सटायरिस्ट भी आएंगे, एंड नॉवलिस्ट भी आना शुरू हो जाएंगे। देखिए, नॉवल इज कंसीडर्ड टू बी द यंगेस्ट जॉनर ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर। इट्स बिकॉज कि नॉवल सबसे एंड में आया है। 1719 में पहला नॉवल रॉबिन्सन क्रूसो वाज रिटन एंड पब्लिश्ड। फिर पामेला 1722 में, फिर 1737 में अदर नॉवेल्स, एंड 1742 में जोसेफ एंड्रयूस, टॉम जोन्स, ये सब लिखे जा रहे थे। 1773 में बहुत मशहूर नॉवलिस्ट था उस वक्त का, जोनाथन स्विफ्ट, उसने नॉवल, आई डोंट रिमेम्बर, बहुत कॉमन नॉवल है, इट्स वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट सटायर रिटन इन फॉर्म ऑफ नॉवल, नॉवल सटायर, गुलिवर्स ट्रैवल, वो लिखा था। अच्छा, A Novel Priest Wickfield, it tells us about the misfortune of good clerics and his family in the poem Deserted Village। अब देखें, पोइट्री भी आ गई, रिस्टोर हो गई, नॉवल भी हो गया, अभी तक थिएटर का दूर दूर तक नाम नहीं है। इन द इंग्लिश विलेज एंड द प्ले, अब प्ले आता है 1773 के बाद, शी स्टूप्स फॉर कॉन्कर। सही है, तो ये गोल्ड स्मिथ के जो है ये कुछ वर्क आपको नज़र आता है इसमें थोड़ा बहुत, लेकिन स्टिल ये दौर जो था इट्स मोर ऑफ द प्रोज नॉवल राइटिंग, एसेइस्ट बहुत सारे आए थे। एंड राइज ऑफ इंग्लिश, जो मॉडर्न इंग्लिश है आपकी, जो अंडरस्टैंडेबल इंग्लिश है, उसका शुरू होता है। द वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट अचीवमेंट ऑफ जॉनसन एरा इज द डिक्शनरी, फर्स्ट इंग्लिश डिक्शनरी वॉज क्रिएटेड। ठीक है, जैसे ही 1784 ख़त्म होता है, तो 1784 के बाद रोमांटिक एज शुरू हुई। रोमांटिक एज समझ लें आप रिवाइवल ऑफ रेनेसांस है। रेनेसांस was basically centered around more theater than poetry, और romantic centered around more poetry than any other genre. Romantic age ने restore किया whatever we or Europe learned in Renaissance, particularly in England. And England was going away from the reality of the lives and emotions, feelings, and there was a sort of utter or sheer misery and hopelessness and selfishness because of the industrialization and England's becoming more conqueror and powerful. So romanticist, अगर आप देखें तो romantics को आप दो हिस्सों में डिवाइड करते हैं, थ्रू पोइट्स, यंग पोइट्स एंड ओल्ड पोइट्स। लेकिन रोमांटिक दौर में भी जो प्ले है वो इतना ज़्यादा पॉपुलर नहीं रहा। रोमांटिक्स क्योंकि रिएक्शन था पिछले दौर का, ऑगस्टन एज का, जॉनसन एरा का, तो रोमांटिक्स का रिएक्शन वो विक्टोरियन एज में आया, जो कि रियलिज्म और नेचुरलिज्म के दौर में आया। इस दौर में जो इंग्लिश में प्ले लिखे गए वो ज़्यादा इंग्लिश राइटर्स के इतने ज़्यादा नहीं थे, ट्रांसलेशंस हुई, और एक राइटर इमर्ज हुआ जिसने वन एक्ट प्ले याद किया, जिसका नाम था हेनरी गिब्सन। डॉल्स हाउस आपको याद होगा, डॉल्स हाउस की हमने जिक्र की, और ऑस्कर वाइल्ड, ये दो ज़्यादातर कॉमेडी राइटर्स आए और इन्होंने प्लेज लिखना शुरू किया, ऑस्कर राइटर्स ने। उसके बाद जो है वो आइडियल हस्बैंड के नाम से एक जॉर्ज बर्नार्ड शॉ का प्ले आया। सो जॉर्ज बर्नार्ड शॉ स्टार्टेड विद अ प्ले एज वेल। सो बाय दैट टाइम दे हैव अराइव्ड, एंड 18th सेंचुरी के अंदर, 19th सेंचुरी के अंदर आपको प्लेज मिलेंगे, आपको मिक्सचर मिलेगा, पोइट्री, प्ले एंड नॉवेल्स टुगेदर। क्योंकि नॉवल का राइज हो चुका था विक्टोरियन एज के अंदर, तो मॉडर्निटी में नॉवल का होना ज़रूरी था। बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट प्लेज अगर आप इस दौर के देखेंगे तो वो है आर्म्स एंड मैन एंड कैंडिडा, जो कि जॉर्ज बर्नार्ड शॉ के प्ले, हेनरी गिब्सन का द रॉल्स हाउस, ऑस्कर वाइल्ड के डिफरेंट प्लेज हैं, लेडी विंस्पर्स फैन, ओके, एन आइडियल हस्बैंड, ये प्लेज बहुत, सर आर्थर विंग, पिनारो रोड, नंबर ऑफ कॉमेडीज एंड मेलो ड्रामा। और फिर उसके बाद जो है अमेरिकन ड्रामा और अमेरिकन प्लेज भी इस दौर में, जिसमें क्लिफर्ड ऑर्डिट है, जिसमें रॉबर्ट शिरवुड है, और टेनेसी विलियम्स, आई वुडंट फॉरगेट, टेनेसी विलियम्स हैं, ये सब प्ले राइट्स आना शुरू हो गए थे। तो यहाँ तक अगर आप देखें तो ये सारे एक मेजर प्लेज हैं जो कि आप अगर नोटिस करें तो आपको ये सारे प्लेज मिलेंगे। ये हिस्ट्री रहेगी क्लासिक प्ले की। खैर हम तो मॉडर्न तक आ गए, लेकिन हमें रुकना था रेनाइसेंस और ड्राइडन तक। Our actual task is to reach till Dryden, and Dryden's comedies, Dryden satire, Renaissance romantics, Renaissance के अंदर अगर आप प्लेस को थ्री कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड करेंगे तो वो शेक्सपियर की वजह से करते हैं। जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ शेक्सपियर यू हैव टू डिवाइड Renaissance into three different categories. Chronicles means the plays that represent the history of Europe, history of the world, history of Greeks. Then tragedies, the main tragic, they mainly deal with the human as a unit of society, human empowering society, or society empowering human, human affecting society, society affecting human, and then the fall of good people, tragedies. Number two, number three आपके पास आ जाती हैं कॉमेडीज़। कॉमेडीज़ के अंदर आपको फिर 3 कॉमेडीज़ मिलेंगी, जैसे प्योरली कॉमेडीज़, देन सटायर एंड ट्रेजिक कॉमेडीज़, जिसमें 12th नाइट, द टेम्पेस्ट, ये सब मिलेंगी। जी, द लेक्चर इज़ गोइंग टू एंड with William Shakespeare's quote, "All the world is a stage, and all the men and women merely players." William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare's poet, classified as the greatest writers in the English language and playwright. Okay, thank you so very much. जी, थिएटर और absurd वगैरह पे हम नहीं आ रहे। We were supposed to only talk about the classics. Till Dryden ही हम जाएंगे जो कोर्स में है। Thank you so much. Yes, if you have any questions, please leave in the comments. आप मैसेज में या कमेंट्स में ज़रूर वो क्वेश्चंस कीजिएगा इससे रिलेटेड, because this is one of the series. Thank you so much.